video, we're going to talk and compare some of the similarities and differences of living in Nashville, Tennessee and Denver, Colorado. Now, I grew up in East Tennessee, but I moved to Denver and have been there for what feels like forever. But I just moved back here to Nashville about a year and a half ago, so I just completed this whole relocating thing, and while it's fresh on my mind, I thought I'd put out there all my notes for those who are in Colorado and thinking about making that move to Nashville, or even vice versa. If you're moving to Denver from Nashville, you might find this helpful too. My name is Jennifer Gramling, and I'm a realtor here in the Nashville, Tennessee area, and if this is your first visit to my channel, I'm putting out videos weekly on all things moving to Nashville, and if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified every time we put out new content. I'm helping people relocate from all over the country and beyond and absolutely love talking Nashville, so be sure to reach out to me with any questions you might have on the area. You can always send a text, call, or email me. I'm happy to help. Now, if you haven't lived in Colorado, this may sound like I'm nitpicking, but if you're a runner or a cyclist, like so many in Denver are, this is super important and kind of a big difference. But compared to Colorado, there's a real lack of bike and running paths here. Now, I grew up in East Tennessee in a town where we didn't even have sidewalks. So when I moved to Denver and saw everyone running and biking, I thought there was some sort of event happening, but that's just every day in Denver. People are always out running and biking, enjoying the outdoors. And if you live there, you know the bike paths literally are accessible from every single neighborhood and suburb, and you can go from one side of the city 50 miles to another. It's kind of amazing. But here in the beautiful state of Tennessee, it's still growing and changing, and I've seen some paths and trails and marked bike lanes downtown on streets, but it's nothing compared to Denver and the surrounding area. But you should know, if you love cycling and you're living especially outside the city of Nashville, bike paths don't run throughout like that. And the other kicker is that riding on the main roads here, they can be really windy, narrow, hilly, and they have absolutely no shoulder sometimes. And while this makes for a beautiful drive and a ride, for me, you couldn't pay me to ride on some of these roads. I see people do it all the time, but I'm terrified for them, so I'll just run in my neighborhood. But there are trails around. If you're in East Nashville, Shelby Bottoms has a 6.5-mile bike loop that runs along the Cumberland River that is absolutely gorgeous. And Percy Warner Park in West Nashville has a shorter loop, but it's also so pretty. It's great for running and biking, and they also have natural trails if you're a trail runner. And some of the state parks and lakes have paths you can ride and run. Also, I've seen lots of cycling groups around here. They all ride together, see their Colorado jerseys, and hey, they're out there riding. And there are some roads that have shoulders. You just may need to plan a bit more for where your ride will be taking you. And maybe just take that into consideration when you're buying a home. Be sure to buy in an area where you have access to roads that are good for riding, because if I wanted to ride from my neighborhood in order to get to a road I'd feel comfortable riding on, I would have to ride probably 5 miles on the back roads to get there. Also, neighborhoods here, they do have lots of walking paths and things. They just don't interconnect the same way that Denver has. So the long distance rides or runs may be harder if you're trying to use those neighborhood paths. The landscape and outdoor activities. Okay, so obviously there are no mountains in Nashville, but you know what Nashville has that Denver doesn't have, and that's lakes. So since I grew up in Tennessee, I spent all my summers on the lake, and I love water sports. And when people move to Denver, you always hear them saying they are moving there for the outdoor activities, but I said that about Tennessee. It just depends on what outdoor activities you want. Sure, there are no 14ers here, but East Tennessee is only about as far as some of those hikes are from Denver, and you can hike the Appalachian Trail there. It's just a different kind of hiking, but it's still amazing. And that hike could literally take you months. And no, there isn't snow skiing here, and that's a bummer, except not for me, because I don't really like being cold. I'd rather stay in the lodge with my glass of wine by the fire, which I can actually do that here. But lakes? Let's face it, Colorado is dry as a bone, and here in Tennessee you have lakes that you can ski on all day and never make it to the end. There are rivers to kayak, canoe, paddleboard, and these lakes are not freezing cold because it's not snowmelt. And I'm not joking, when I moved to Denver and my family told me that people put boats on the Cherry Creek Reservoir and sailed, I honestly thought they were kidding. If you're moving here, there are still tons of outdoor activities you will love, and you can still plan those trips back to Colorado for that ski season, and then enjoy the lakes here in the meantime. The weather. I'm still on the fence on this one. I'm still not sure which I like better. It probably really depends on the season. I love Tennessee weather, but I hate the summer. I literally don't want to go outside. People in Florida and Alabama would laugh at me because it could be a lot worse. And Colorado has plenty of 100+ degree days in the summer, and Tennessee rarely reaches that. But still, it feels hotter because of the humidity here in June through August, September. However, all the other months out of the year, I love the weather here. The humidity feels low, we have seasons, we have rain, which I love, which gives us these beautiful trees and flowers that you could never grow out west. The fall and spring here is absolutely gorgeous with so many colors. Winters are mild, sometimes it gets cold, but it's not terrible. And we maybe get a tablespoon of snow, but everyone stops to appreciate it, and you never take your snow for granted here. So yeah, summer is hot and sticky. The rest of the year I love, and I really don't miss getting hit with a blizzard in May and ridiculous amounts of hail. I'll touch on the schools for you parents out there just for a second, but they're basically the same. You're gonna find excellent schools here, and you'll find excellent schools in Denver, and you'd be happy with your choices here, I promise. But one kind of cool thing is that middle schools here have sports that Denver schools don't. So cheer, football, basketball, volleyball, really anything that you have in the high school sports, you're gonna have in the middle school sports too. And while your kids can always go play those at clubs, in Denver, it's kind of fun to be able to go to their middle school games here too. Okay, so looking at the overall cost of living, it's a little less in Nashville, but it's pretty darn close. But I'll tell you, you will save some money in some places, like state income tax. There's no state income tax here, so that's really awesome. Utilities and all of that is basically the same. Our homeowner's insurance, though, is a little less. Our car insurance was also less, and our property tax is less, registering your car. So I was never happier than I went to register my car here, and it was like $50. So that was really nice after paying about $1,000 a year in Colorado for each of my cars. So now I'm not super sad when it's time for my plates to be renewed. And also, if you're interested, you can actually go to college here for free, so that's something you might want to know. You can get a 2-year degree from a community college or a technical college here as an adult for $0 paid for by the Tennessee Lottery. And there's no qualifications for this, no grades required. I think you just need to be a resident for a year in the state in order to qualify for that. But it's really awesome. So if you have a lot of kids who need to go through college, or you've been wanting to go back to college as an adult but you can't afford it, this is a great solution that Tennessee has offered to all of its residents to be able to go and get that 2-year degree for free. And then there's the cost of housing. And I think you're gonna find that it's very much the same. I mean, we sold our house, which was in Southeast Aurora, Parker area, and moved to a very similar type neighborhood here because my kids wanted that same kind of feel. And we purchased a home for the same amount that we sold our house there for, and the school district is very comparable. The lot size is exactly the same. The house size is exactly the same. But the thing is, though, that our house that we got here is so much nicer. The finishes are just nicer. And no knock on Colorado, but the houses didn't always have a ton of curb appeal in my opinion. Just a lot of siding, a lot of flat back houses without a shutter anywhere in sight or a covered porch. Lots of brown and green siding, you know what I mean. And here there's a lot more brick, stone, covered porches, and just seem to have more curb appeal in my opinion. But these are the types of neighborhoods we saw when I was looking here, and I just thought they seemed so much more pretty from the outside, but also on the inside as well. But one key difference that you are gonna notice here in Nashville that's gonna be tough for a lot of people moving from Colorado is that there's no basements. It's really hard to find a house with a basement here. So if you love having your basement, a place to go, or send your kids to hang out or watch movies or whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna have a hard time finding that here. So, and also for storage, there's a lack of storage. So for me, I bought a house, I don't have a basement, but I do have a 2,000 square foot attic, which is great. I can store things in there. However, it's not temperature controlled. So if I wanted to be able to, hang out in there or finish it, I would have to completely finish it because otherwise it's 1,000 degrees in the summer and really, really cold in the winter. So you may miss that basement. I know a lot of people moving here really do. And the thing is, I didn't really consider myself a basement person until I didn't have one. Okay, now for sure, someone out there is gonna get mad at me for saying this in Denver, but I think there's way more to do here socially. Obviously there's tons of live music, but on any given weekend in Denver, I felt like the options were so limited compared to Nashville. And I know people picture Nashville and they just think of Broadway with the honky tonks and pedal taverns, but Nashville has so much more than that. And it's not just all country music here, you can go see any genre of music that you want. And here are some of the most incredible venues, including tiny little places with just incredible talent, endless restaurants, and places like Pinewood Social and Finn's Mechanical with games and other super fun activities. There's just always something going on and something always to do. And I just remember being out in Denver some nights and it just being completely dead, and you're just never gonna run into that in Nashville. You can be out at 4 a.m. and you'll still find something to do in Nashville. Okay, so those are just a few of my observations after moving to Nashville from Denver, but maybe you have some others. If you've moved to Nashville or vice versa from Nashville to Denver and noticed something really different, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear others' opinions too. And again, if you have any questions on moving from Denver or anywhere else, I'd love to help. Send a text or call to this number or send me an email. I'd love to answer all your questions. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't to catch all the new videos coming out on Nashville and the surrounding area.